Afternoon. We'll call the meeting to order. Committee, we have several bills I'd like to take a look at doing final action on here today or pass them out favorably. First one that I would look at would be House Bill 2504. Reviser, would you give us a brief briefing on it?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, House Bill 2504. This bill we heard earlier in the session requires a service-connected disability be a physical disability to qualify for a disabled veteran distinctive license plate. Essentially, the bill would, as it stands now, would change the definition of disabled veteran to only apply to service-connected physical disabilities. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Are there any questions for the reviser? Seeing none. Representative Hoheisel,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have an amendment.
would you make a motion on the bill first?
I apologize. Mr. Chair, I move we pass out HB 2504 favorably.
Is there a second? Second by Representative Ballard. Now you can bring your amendment, please.
Mr. Chair, I do have an amendment. So if we remember the hearing on 2504, Representative Bergkamp brought this bill to us. In the meantime, Representative Bergkamp has sat down with the opponent and others that had some misgivings on this legislation. They've came up with some compromise language, which is before you today in this amendment. The initial opponent, MOAA, is now our proponent, and the others are good with it as well. I believe Representative Proctor will also speak to it, Mr. Chair.
Is there a second on the amendment? Representative, pardon? Neely, yes. I'm sorry. I drew an absolute blank. My apologies, Representative. Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As this bill was originally drafted, I was not a fan at all. And I think a lot of my constituents were very concerned about this bill, but I appreciate Representative Bergkamp and Mr. Kelly from MOA hammering out this compromise agreement. I think with this new language, this is a much needed bill, and I will support it.
Are there other questions on the bill? Representative Hoheisel.
We have the reviser kind of just run through the amendment.
Sure. Reviser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, committee, you can see this is a proposed substitute bill. So, the statute that was originally in House Bill 2504 would be stricken, obviously, and this would be replaced by ks 8-161, and essentially everyone who qualifies for a disabled veteran plate now would continue to qualify. That definition is not being changed under the new language. Essentially, what's the difference is there'd be kind of two license plates, one that would be printed with an ISA symbol, one that would not be printed with an ISA symbol. So the plate would be printed with an ISA symbol, international symbol of access. If the disabled veteran meets the definition of a person with a disability under KSA 8-1,124, that definition is any individual who has a severe visual impairment, cannot walk 100 feet without stopping to rest, cannot walk without the use of assistance from a brace, crane, crutch, cane, crutch, etc., is restricted by lung disease, uses portable oxygen. So kind of there are more, you could call them physical disability attachments with that definition. So that would allow the printing of the ISA symbol. If the plate is printed with the ISA symbol, you get all of the current parking privileges that is allowed under the statute, which you can see on page 2 going into page 3, and the difference between the plate printed with the ISA symbol and the plate that is not printed with the ISA symbol is the ability to park in any parking space on public or private property, which is clearly marked as being reserved for the use of persons with a disability or persons responsible for the transportation of a person with a disability, except a parking space on private property, which is clearly marked as being reserved for the use of a specified person with a disability. So if the plate has the ISA symbol, you have that privilege. If not, then you just get the other two privileges, which are listed in the statute. That I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Other questions for the reviser on the amendment? Representative Hoheisel.
It's not a question for a revisor, it's just a statement. From what I understand, the Department of Revenue is good with making two different license plates as well. So,
Any further questions for the reviser? Hearing none, is there any other discussion on the amendment? Representative Delberdane.
Not really question or anything, just comments, but I've heard this exact issue voiced to me over and over by veterans that utilize the Wichita Veterans Hospital. Just the note, all of the handicap parking places are taken up by people who aren't truly handicapped in a physical type way. So I'm hoping this will help fix it up, and I appreciate you bringing the amendment.
Seeing no further discussion, Representative Hoheisel, you may close on your amendment.
thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do want to take a second to commend Representative Burkamp for bringing all sides to the table and finding some compromise language as a freshman. That's truly impressive. So with that, Mr. Chair, I close.
You've heard the motion to amend by Representative Hoheisel. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. And we're back on the bill as amended. Is there any further discussion on the bill? Representative Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I renew my motion to pass out HB 2504 favorably as amended.
Okay, and the second agrees with that. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry. Okay,
I'm sorry, not as amended, substitute
yes,
for
substitute.
House Bill 2504.
Yes, sorry, that was my mistake. So now the substitute for House Bill 2504, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next committee, I would like to move on to House Bill 2609. This is one that allows restricted driver's license to attend worship services. We had it on the House floor. It was referred back to us. They were requesting some changes. I pretty much dropped the ball on that, did not get any changes made. So we're back to, I'd like to work this as it is, and then we'll see it again on the House floor. So with that, Mr. Reviser, would you brief us on that again, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee House Bill 2609 would allow 15-year-old restricted driver's license holders the ability to drive directly to and from the worship service of any religious organization. Religious organization is defined in statute, and this would be a similar privilege that's allowed for restricted license holders beginning at age 16. So apply for age 15 as well. The language mirrors that as well. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions for the reviser? Representative Howe.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a question, but I would like to make a motion.
Please do.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we pass out favorably House Bill 2609.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch you seconded. Seconded by Representative Seibert. Further discussion? Hearing none, Representative, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I close.
You've heard the motion by Representative Howe to pass House Bill 2609 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion carries. Next bill I'd like to take a look at would be Senate Bill 161. Reviser Wagner.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee Senate Bill 161 was a bill we heard on Tuesday that would provide for the use of personal package delivery devices on sidewalks and crosswalks, exempts those devices from motor vehicle requirements, and allows local governments the ability to prohibit such devices. Personal delivery device means a powered device that weighs 150 pounds or less, excluding cargo, that is operated primarily on sidewalks and crosswalks, and intended primarily for the transport of property, is capable of navigating with or without the active control or monitoring of a person. Section 2 in the bill contains certain requirements for these devices, such as that they're only authorized to operate under the bill on any sidewalk or crosswalk of a municipality or the public highway of a municipality for the limited purpose of gaining or regaining access to a sidewalk or crosswalk. They'd have to yield to vehicles and not unreasonably interfere with traffic, obey all traffic and pedestrian signals, not operate more than in excess of 6 miles per hour, and prominently display a unique ID number and contact information for the controlling entity. They also have to be equipped with systems to avoid pedestrians, pets, vehicles, bicycles, and have the same rights and obligations as pedestrians. Under the bill, currently, these devices would be subject to annual commercial vehicle fees for vehicles that are 10 to 12,000 pounds and have to carry insurance policies of at least $1 million. And they are not allowed to transport hazardous materials. So, and I guess I should go on. Section 3 allows local units of governments to prohibit personal delivery devices if it's determined to be in the interest of public safety. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Other questions for the reviser? Hearing none, Representative Delperdang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to move Senate Bill 161 out favorably.
Is there a second? Second by Representative Francis. Is there discussion? Representative Delperdang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have an amendment if I could get the reviser to pass it out. And then I've also got what I'm going to call some cheat sheets on this that the reviser doesn't have. I'll possibly get you to pass these around. Would you like me to explain while he's passing?
Yes, please go ahead and explain.
The reviser's passing out the amendment itself with the balloons, and I've got a little spreadsheet here that kind of breaks it down a little easier, I think. But there was some concerns that came up, not necessarily from Amazon or anything, but from FedEx and some others there. So as a result, you'll see some balloons out there. I'll just run down through them real quick. The weight on the original bill showed up at maximum 150 pounds, excluding cargo. The amendment goes up to 550 pounds. Let's see, on the section 2, we've got it where it allows these sidewalk or crosswalk, and so it can go around obstacles, if you will, and in doing so, it can run on the right side of the road or a shoulder of, as it's called out, a public highway. We increased in section 2B, we increased the maximum speed from 6 mile per hour to 10 mile per hour. And then section 2D, we cleaned up the fee structure. When I first seen the bill, I kept looking at it because it was based on vehicles of 10,000 pounds to 12,000 pounds. What we did is just put a straight $50 fee that would go to the state highway fund and kind of cleaned it up quite a bit there. There was also questions of the general liability coverage. Originally it started out at 100,000. The Senate popped $1 million on there. I moved it down to 500,000, hopefully just make it a little bit easier there. And then we put a section 3 in for local control. And what we did is added language for the requirement that the locality hold a public hearing before enacting an ordinance. It also allows the locality to regulate the devices to ensure the safety of residents. With that, I'll stand for any questions on it.
Is there a second on the amendment? That was Representative Francis. Okay, thank you. Questions on the amendment? Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the bringing of the amendment, the ability to regulate from the municipalities, does that allow them, if they don't want these in their town, they could just restrict the use of them inside the city?
In my opinion, they're going to have local, what's home rule. They're going to have local ordinances and home rule. This just simply says you'll hold a hearing on it rather than just enacting.
Mr. Chair, you mind if I ask the reviser here to weigh in? Do you think if a municipality wanted to ban these in their city, they'd have the power to do that.
Advisor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, with the balloon, it'll create kind of the subsection A in section 3 that still allows local governments to prohibit them entirely, if in the interest of public safety, as it's written now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Revisor.
Representative Hauser.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is not a question for anybody. It's more of a statement on this amendment. This is experimental stage, and I was iffy on the original bill, but I'm super iffy on this amendment, raising the weight limit of the machines up to by 400 pounds, and then letting them actually run on the shoulder of the road. I can't support this amendment. I think we're in the experimental stages of this. Maybe when we get through maybe a little time with it, we may be able to expand our operation. But right now, I'm not going to support this.
Representative Toplicker. Is your mic on?
Oh, sorry. On the amendment, on new section 3, the lower box on page, it says page 3 of the bill. Okay, so it did say that personal delivery devices may be prohibited by local resolutions or ordinances. Now we have put all this other stuff in front of that sentence. Is that correct? We put A, and then the lower box on the second page of the handout, we put all that before that. Well, so does that mean that if a municipality wanted to prohibit these, they would have to hold a public hearing too? Or does it mean they will have to hold a public hearing if they want to enact and allow these, enact the ability to use these and allow these?
What it does, it requires the local government to hold a hearing before prohibiting.
So this is only put in here to have a public hearing if they want to prohibit. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
But by passage of this bill, they would already be allowed then. And so you wouldn't have a public hearing to allow, because this bill is already, the draft of this bill is already doing that. So that this amendment that you're adding would only have a public hearing to prohibit.
Right. The bill allows the usage of, but it still gives local ordinance control of it. It's just simply saying if you're going to prohibit it, you need to hold a public hearing to discuss or bring it up. Or restrict. Yeah, or restrict.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Wagner, did you have a comment? Okay. I saw you reach for your mic. I thought maybe you did. First, I have Representative Weigel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the weight, on the original bill, I believe it said not to exceed 150 pounds was the weight of the vehicle itself, excluding whatever cargo is being transported. Is that correct?
That was excluding cargo. That's
okay. But I took a look through here again. Does it give any dimensions of the size of these vehicles? I know somebody had talked about it was the size of like a beer cooler or something. Is that in fact true, or are there any dimensions to the size of this vehicle?
I'll jump in. The revisor's welcome to also, but my understanding of it's going to vary by company or organization. For example, when we looked at Amazon. The example of a cooler was used quite a bit. So it weighs less. It's not even close to the 150 pound. But yet when you get into UPS, FedEx or so, I was given the example of, like you say, a beer fridge or a small refrigerator type thing. That's why the weight went up proportionately.
Okay, well, that's fine. I just wondered when you go from 150 pounds to over 500 pounds, does the dimensions of that autonomous vehicle increase? And if it does, what exactly are the dimensions going to be? I mean, it doesn't even look like we even address what it's going to look like. We know how much weight it could have, excluding cargo, but we don't exactly know the configuration. And I was just kind of curious about that.
Now, I was given an example of similar in size to a electric wheelchair cart that you've seen on the sidewalks.
Supervisor Wagner, did you want to weigh in, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to say you're correct that they're really the only size restriction is the weight limit. There aren't any dimensions or anything contained in the bill.
Okay, so it can be, in other words, if we're going to increase the weight from 150 to 550 pounds for this vehicle, sans cargo, whatever the cargo is, but we don't really say how it's going to be configured. If it's box shape or the size of, like a motorized wheelchair or something. And then that brings up the other thing I'm thinking about is weight of the cargo. Is there going to be a minimum and maximum? Well, minimum probably not, but a maximum amount of cargo weight in that vehicle, or is it pretty much they just put in whatever they can fit in there?
If you want to. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are still no limits on the weight of the cargo. The entire size of the device just is excluding cargo still. There isn't anything added.
Okay. And here's my point in all this is that if we don't know the configuration, but we're increasing the weight, then I'd kind of like to know how it's going to be configured without any cargo in it and with cargo. And the thing that bothers me is when this thing is actually traveling down the side of the road or on a sidewalk, it becomes more of a something that's a lot heavier than a bicycle or even somebody that pulls a wagon, a red wagon, filled with say they're selling Girl Scout cookies or something. And if it's autonomous, I kind of have a thing in the back of my mind saying, well, I don't quite know about that. That's, a little bit more than something I'd want to have the possibility that it crashes into something. So, especially with the increase of that weight. So, I'll leave it up to the body on that. That's just something I would throw out there. So,
Representative Hoheisel.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of different things. If I may first, to the previous representative's concerns, I have it up on my laptop now, the FedEx device. You can kind of just YouTube it. It's about the size of it right there. That just as Representative Delberding has said, it's basically a size of a wheelchair, basically one of those electric wheelchairs. My question for the revisor is on the local control section 3. if a locality wants to restrict but not prohibit, just put some more restrictions in on these devices under this proposed amendment, do they have to hold a public hearing for that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, they would. How the language is in subsection B is hold a public hearing before enacting an ordinance or resolution to restrict personal delivery devices. So restrict would include prohibit and any additional restrictions that aren't contained in this law.
So under this amendment, though, they would still be able to further restrict if they want to. They just have to hold the public hearing.
That is correct.
I got you. And Mr. Chair, I'm going to support this amendment. The weight going up to 550 pounds to me is actually a issue of fairness. If we just pass the proposed language without this amendment, Amazon's a great company to me, but they would be the only ones that would be able to do this. Kind of increasing the weight limit allows more people into the market. So I will be in support of this amendment. Thank you.
Supervisor Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did just want to specify to your question, Representative Hoheisel, political subdivisions could regulate the operation of these devices on a highway pedestrian area. They cannot regulate the design, manufacture, maintenance, or types of property that could be transported.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Representative Hoheisel.
So could they further restrict a weight limit or a size and dimensions limit if they so choose?
Supervisor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't believe so. I think that would get into the territory of the design and manufacturing of these devices.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion on the amendment. Representative Seibert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I applaud Amazon and all those companies. They're doing a great job. Also, I have a little heartburn with this too, and that's on fees, section 2D. That was lowered from $250 to $50. My problem with that is any municipality or city that has to have these units running, it would be a great deal for them, of course, but they're going to have to put a lot of signage up to show that in their crossings, and to be a deal for it. It'd be just like bicycle routes, and I've heard a lot of complaints from our cities and counties that they have to put all this bicycling stuff on the roads, painting and things like that, and they get no licensing fees to use the facilities. That just pushes that expense to the regular plate. So I'm probably not in with this amendment. I'm probably not real excited with it.
Representative Topliker.
With the increase in speed and the weight, how would that be regulated? Would there be an officer with a scale? I mean, I'm trying to understand, how do you keep the weight under 550 pounds, or at least that much and under? And then what if there is one going down the sidewalk at 15 mile an hour?
Okay. As far as the speed, I can address that. And that obviously they can be set and governed. But the speed we looked at it is 5 miles per hour below what an electric cart would move at for a human being. Those are rated around 15. That's why we went with 10. But as far as is there going to be scales out there and people addressing that, I really can't answer that. So.
Okay. Thank you. Another question, Mr. Chair. Will these things operate in the wintertime too, and when there's ice, snow, and is that going to be all year, no matter what weather?
To our knowledge, it'd be a year-round proposition. Same token, they are monitored, GPS, et cetera. So if something gets stuck, there's a monitoring center that will be notified, and they won't be just sitting out there. It would require human attendance at that point.
And I was thinking sliding, off the path Anyway, thank you.
Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support this amendment. And, you know, I've listened to some of my fellow representatives and their concerns, and I understand the concerns, but we got to remember the companies that are going to be using these are very large companies that, you know, for which their reputations are important to them. And so I can only imagine that an Amazon or a FedEx or UPS would be deathly afraid of having an accident that resulted in the injury of someone, because that would spread like wildfire across the nation and would endanger their ability to use this equipment. So I do understand everybody's concerns, and my big concern was just making sure that if a municipality wanted to opt out, they could opt out. That's the local level. That's where the rubber meets the road in democracy. And if people don't want them in their towns, they will have the power through their elected officials at the municipal level to do it. But I just couldn't imagine that, a company would be irresponsible enough to try to operate these in inclement weather or in some unsafe way or condition. So I support this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Cyward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the second time. And I agree with everybody. This is broken up. That's why we have committee meetings to discuss all avenues. Question was brought up with the weight and size. Again, the fees, the liability coverage was dropped, you know, so that's not standard for a corporation because of that. The other question I want to ask is, will they be equipped with turn signals and brake lights and lighting so that in the evening or the time changes, they will be recognized, and people, if they're going to be running on the shoulders of highways, bicycles have quite a bit of requirements for lights, flashing lights and everything else to be distinctive so you know what they are, because now we're going to be dealing in traffic again. That's going to include a lot of signage for the counties and cities or whatever they're going to run. And again, I hope the companies don't think I'm against any of this. I'm just trying to make it safe for my constituents in my towns.
And I agree with those comments. I'm looking for it because I know there was something in the bill here specifically on lights, especially if it's operating after
Supervisor.
dark. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bottom of page 2, going to page 3, is on the amendment. It's current language in the bill that these devices shall be equipped with and employ lighting on both the front and rear of the personal delivery device, visible on all sides of the personal delivery device in clear weather from a distance of at least 500 feet.
Representative Cyward.
I got that part that's on the sidewalk, but if they're allowed to go on right of ways, or not right of ways, but on the shoulders, are they going to give directional signals to the traffic that's going to be riding on the shoulders next to them?
Advisor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. They have the same rights and obligations as pedestrians, so I'm not sure if they're already equipped with those signals, but I don't believe it would be required under the bill.
Anything further? Okay. Any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, Representative Delperdang, you may close.
I appreciate the conversation. It's been a good one, and I close.
Heard the motion by Representative Delperdang to amend. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
The ayes appear to have it. Division's been called for. All in favor, raise your right hand, please. Or your left, I don't care. You help me count. Seven.
Did you count me, Mr. Chairman?
No, I did not.
Oh.
But I appreciate it. You are a yes. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
So that's 8. All those opposed? Motion passes 8-5. We're back on the bill as amended. Is there further discussion?
Yes, I do have, Mr.
Okay, Representative Toplicker.
So, where in the bill does it say, I know on page 2, it says that, these shall yield to, pedestrians, bicyclists, vehicles, wheelchairs, pedestrians. Where does it say that it should yield to a police officer?
Supervisor Wagner?
So in other words, Mr. Chairman, if an officer thought that one was operating unsafely, how would that officer stop it or pull it over?
Well, it appears if it's going to stop for pedestrians or other items that might be on the sidewalk or whatever, I would assume that it wouldn't say, hey, it's an officer, I'm going to run over it. So it would stop.
Mr. Chairman, what if it won't stop for a pedestrian or someone on a bicycle? And so that's why someone called 911, this thing's out of control. And we would like to have it stopped or whatever, theoretical question.
Right. Representative or Supervisor Wagner.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'll point the committee to two areas. The one is the contact information has to be on the device, so that would at least allow for the operator to be contacted. In section 3, it doesn't really, I guess, answer your question, but it does say this section does not affect the authority of a local authority's law enforcement officer to enforce the laws of the state relating to the operation of these devices. So they're authorized as a matter of how. I'm not exactly sure.
Representative Toplicker.
If there's air in the tire, maybe spikes.
Is there further discussion or questions on the bill as amended? Seeing none, Representative, you may close. I'm sorry. Representative Jacobs.
I apologize for the late thought. In this bill, is there any address if there's tampering with these devices or anything, or maliciousness, or just for something silly, if I'm walking down the road and I see one of these little gadgets driving down the road and I decide, you know what, I'm going to just sit on this and take a ride. Is there any, I don't know, it could happen, but any penalties for that in this? Like destruction of private property or anything?
Supervisor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd have to look a little further into that. They do have the same rights as pedestrians, so I'm sure there is some sort of law. I'm not familiar exactly where that you couldn't, impede a pedestrian's right to use the sidewalk. So that might go into that. As far as a specific penalty, I'd have to look a little further.
Representative Cyward.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair, for the third time. I totally supported this bill as its original form because I think it's a great way to do these things and start out with it. But as it is amended, I'll probably not be able to support it.
Any further comments or questions? Representative Weigel.
Thank you for the second time. I just thought of something. These are already in operation, correct? I mean, I think in testimony we heard that they are operating in California, parts of California, and one or two other states. Do we have any data or information from those states on how they're performing out in the field on a day-to-day basis?
Not that I'm aware of.
I'm going to say I don't have any information specific to that, other than these are they'll be similar in size and concept. If you've ever been to a Walmart and they've got the cleaning machines running around, they're unmanned. They have the little bubble flashing on it, and anybody walks close to it or gets around it, it stops. I mean, they've been using those for several years now.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Cyward.
Thank you again. In response to the vice chair's comments of somebody standing close, what if a dog follows it? Will it quit running then and just stay there if the dog's chasing it?
Any further comments or questions? Any online? Okay. Representative, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I close for the second time.
Okay. So
As amended. Yes.
you've heard the motion to pass Senate Bill 161 as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Representative Helgerson.
Mr. Chairman, that was a very good question I heard earlier, and that was, since they're in operation in other states, which we did not hear any information for, in the next 3 or 4 days or 5 days before it hits the floor, it might be helpful if we could have staff reach out to the various states, California, Arizona, wherever else they're participating, find out what the, in particular, weight, liability, other factors are in those states, so we can see how it compares to the bill that's written.
Good point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item of business we have is Senate Bill 506. You, Reviser on Senate Bill 506, please.
Same as Sharon, Committee Senate Bill 506, bill we heard yesterday, provides for the Kansas Down Syndrome Awareness License Plate. They're subject to the requirements of KSA 8-1,141, initial issuance of 250 plates, and design costs up to $5,000. And royalty payments set between $25 and $100 by the North Central Kansas Down Syndrome Society will be deposited into a fund that'll be created for them. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the reviser? Seeing none, Representative Helgerson.
I move the adoption of Senate Bill 506.
Second by Representative Ballard. Any further discussion? Representative, you may close.
Close.
Heard the motion by Representative Helgerson to pass Senate Bill 506. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Got one further thing to do. I've got minutes for March 9th and 15th. Representative Helgerson.
Move the adoption of the minutes.
Second by Representative Delperdang. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Okay. Motion carries. This does conclude our business, and this is our final meeting. So thank you all for your participation and work this year. I do appreciate it very much. Staff, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.